You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
They are keeping me hostage. Homeless Tacoma Advocacy Group is still occupying the Fife Motel. So I did a podcast on this yesterday. I didn't quite have all the details. Had one of the podcast fans with the initials AW reached out to me and said, hey, this is what's going down. So I did a podcast on this, and I didn't quite have all the details. And I basically, because it was such an emerging news story, I didn't have all the research done that I really wanted to, but I ran with it anyway. And so you've probably already watched on this, my podcast number 1 on this, it just wasn't totally filled out. Story wasn't filled out. Now it's filled out. Now we're going to get into it. I've got 3 articles on this. This is a situation that is shocking and frightening, and it's like, what? What is going on? Let's jump on into it. If you're new here, my name's Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies, and I randomly read the news of what's going on in the Pacific Northwest and some other places on stuff that people seem to be interested in. All right, this is an article from the News Tribune. They are keeping me hostage. Homeless Tacoma Advocacy Group occupy the Fife Motel. And you notice here it says Advocacy Group. That's an important concept because we're going to kind of maybe figure out, are these really homeless advocates? They say they are, but what's the real deal? A homeless advocacy group is occupying a Fife Motel without pay, and city police are looking to cooperate with them to find shelter. Tacoma Housing Now booked 16 rooms at the Fife Travelodge Motel at 3518 Pacific Highway on Thursday. Motel manager, that was Christmas Eve, the 24th. I'm recording this podcast on the 30th, so 6 days later, still got like 40 people in a dozen hotel rooms just kind of hunkered down, not paying. Nobody else is really able to use the hotel. Manager and the owners like, this isn't working. This isn't going to work. After paying for the initial night, the occupants have refused to pay or leave for 4 days. Now it's 6. I'm just devastated, he told the News Tribune. Because of the protest, I have nothing else. I was barely getting through this pandemic, and now this. This Christmas, the Grinch came. That's the owner/manager of this travel lodge. So he's like I talked about before, he's an individual operator. Yes, he's under the corporate umbrella of Travelodge, but as far as I can tell, this is independently owned. And while these hotel rooms are being taken hostage, and they are, if you're not leaving and you haven't paid, you are basically trespassing. So that's what the situation we've got. And this is in Fife. That's outside of Tacoma to the south of Seattle. Probably by, I don't know, an hour, depending on traffic, something like that. Fife Chief Police Pete Fisher said the group is trespassing. Rather than use force to remove the people, he wants to work with the organization. We're trying to see if we can work out a resolution without having to take law enforcement action, Fisher said. We're talking about people with medical issues who belong in the hospital, all right? You don't belong in a hotel if you have medical issues. Cold weather that are homeless. We're talking about people with medical issues and are in cold weather that are homeless. Yep, we know that. So we're trying to work with our neighboring agencies to see what we can do in the form of relief or temporary shelter. Rebecca Parson, the spokesperson for the Tacoma Housing Now. Now that's the organization they're going under, Tacoma Housing Now. Said at least 5 people have died this year from exposure while living outside in Tacoma. She said there are positive COVID-19 cases at homeless shelters, and the group wanted a safe option for those with medical conditions. So they hijacked a small hotel, and they are hunkered down, and they are demanding that the city pay for these rooms that they are illegally occupying. That's what's happening. We wanted somewhere for people to stay warm and dry and get showers and stay as safe as possible, Parson told the News Tribune. There are people staying in the motel rooms and about 60 protesters standing outside the motel. All right. So what we've got is we've basically got an advocacy group that is same group that's Red House in Portland, and this is kind of what I'm being told, and these are the pieces of the puzzle that I'm putting together. This is the same group, Red House in Mississippi Avenue North in Portland, also Yellow House in Seattle, and a bunch of other occupations they've done. So this is a This is not necessarily an advocacy group. They use that to further their cause, which we'll get to. There are people staying in the motel rooms and about 60 protesters standing outside the motel. And they are basically saying, hey, this is a protest and we need to have people here to protest as they typically do, as you saw down in the Red House down in Portland. If you're not familiar with that situation, a family didn't make their mortgage payment, got evicted out of their home. 2 years later, they're still there trying to go through a process, and basically they are trespassing in that Red House. I'm not even sure if that situation's resolved yet, but the protesters basically barricaded off public streets and just made an absolute nuisance of themselves. And the developer who owns the home has just been put through the ringer. So you got a lot of goofy stuff going on. I mean, these are some crazy situations, basically hijacking a hotel in the name of compassion for homelessness. I don't think so. Parsons said 2 more motel rooms of unhoused people have joined in the protest, making the total 18 rooms occupied. And I'm not trying to say that these people don't need housing, but this is the wrong way of going about it. And this group does not care. The Tacoma Housing Now does not care. By any means, they will get their message out. And you know what? In reality, it's kind of working because I'm talking about it here, right? But what we're talking about is basically just domestic terrorism. Let's be honest. That's what's going on. Tacoma Housing Now group said they have housed 43 people at the motel. The advocacy group or domestic terrorists, wants Tacoma and Pierce County to pay for the rooms. We initially signed the contract, paperwork, when you check in. We did it for all these people. Now we're not going to leave. And the city, we made these decisions on your behalf. You need to pay. That is not how things are done. But according to Tacoma Housing Now, that's what they're doing. The group insists they want the manager, Randhawa, to be paid. Well, of course they do. Of course they do. How about they just don't enter into this situation and turn this guy's world upside down? But they've already done that. And so to kind of round out the situation, they're like, but we still want him to be paid. We're not going to pay it. It's thousands of dollars at this point. The city should pay because they're the ones that need to house these people. And they do. The city does need to do it. But there are ways in which we get this done, and domestic terrorism is not one of them. But apparently that is what's going on right now. We paid for the first night, Christmas Eve, and then we're sending the bill to the county and the city. It's the same thing as the Red House down on Mississippi Avenue North. Just kind of doing stuff the way you want to do it, and then basically citing law of, well, based on this arcane law, this is what we're doing, and we are not under the laws of the United States. And that's just the kind of thing they're doing. So they pay for a night, hijack the rooms for 6 days, don't pay, and then have somebody else pay? I mean, that's not the way this goes. That is not according to the law. Asked about the crime of trespassing, Parsons said, and here it is, deflect. The biggest crime of all is anybody dying of cold in the streets. I agree, that is a crime. But doing one thing wrong doesn't make another action correct. But in their world, apparently that is what's going on. Pierce County said they're looking into this, but they have not been in the discussions with Tacoma Housing Now. The manager said he feels the group isn't giving him a choice, which they're not. They're staying, and they're basically saying, yep, we're not paying. You're just going to have to deal with it. And he doesn't feel supported by the police or the city. That's a huge issue for me. Those people should just be kicked out. If you're not paying, boom, you're gone. That's just business, right? And then the flip side to that is people are like, oh, but they're homeless. Okay. So governmental agencies need to take care of that. And I think that, that's a lot of what this protest is trying to bring to the forefront is there's a lot of people out there homeless. Yes. But hijacking a hotel and not paying, that's a no-go. That's a no-go in my book. He said there was destruction of property when one of the doors was broken after he locked a motel room. So now they're destroying the hotel room. They are keeping me hostage. No one is out to help me, he said. It's complete lawlessness in the city of Fife. So this guy's basically just on his own with big group of homelessness or homeless people, and then a bunch of protesters on top of that. If the situation does not change in the next few days, Randhawa said he will abandon the property and his 15 employees will stop showing up. Because what else is he going to do? Why would he continue to go and service a motel that he's not getting any revenue from that is being destroyed? He wouldn't. The only reason you'd show up is to keep it from being further destroyed. This is just a crazy scenario. Crazy scenario. You gotta buckle down. You gotta boot these people out day one. Otherwise, it just gets out of control. It's like the house and the eviction house. You just gotta toss those people. That's what you gotta do. I'll have to lock the doors, and if the city won't kick them out, they can have it, he said. I'll shut off the water, and I'm not fighting with these people. I believe there should be a law, and there is, and law should enforce this. But people are so scared of a little bit of confrontation with a quote-unquote advocacy group that they're not willing to do their job. Or political leadership is saying, yeah, let's try and avoid that. Let's sidestep that issue. Ooh, let's see if that just goes away on its own. Don't go in there. Don't clean house like cops should do. The organization took over Galt Middle School in November to house those experiencing homelessness, but left after Tacoma police threatened to make arrests. And that was because the air quality was toxic in that school. Not a place you want to put anybody. Fife City Manager Hyun Kim told the News Tribune he wants an open dialogue between all parties. He wants to help those who are experiencing homelessness, but also worries about the small business. Yeah, because that small business is going down with the way this is continuing on. But these domestic terrorists, they don't care. That's not really, oh, we want you to get paid. That's the lip service they are paying to this owner of this small business. Right during the holidays. Could you imagine Christmas Eve? It's like, no, we're not doing that. But how would you know? I mean, you wouldn't know that you'd probably be blindsided when a bunch of people show up and it's like, okay. And then you should have the backing of the law. Hey, if you are trespassing, get the F out. That's kind of my thought, but that's not happening. And this guy feels just totally alone, the owner of this motel. I would like to bring together partners to provide wraparound services to these people. I understand that some are sick and just a hotel room is not an end to all be all. An end all be all, he said. Occupying a private motel and potentially put them out of business is untenable. I fear for those who might lose their job. There's like 10 employees here. So it's not a small little bit. I mean, it's a decent little operation. He does not have a timetable of when or if law enforcement would be used. Pierce County Council member Pam Roach, who represents Fife, said that this situation is a result of the need for housing for the homeless and a disregard for people's businesses. All right. It goes right back to the fact that we need to find space for people, especially when it's cold, she told the News Tribune. If the government isn't doing its job, citizens pay for it, just like this business owner. Hear, hear. This guy is just getting raked over the coals. Yeah, the Grinch came. Feel really sorry for this guy. I mean, he's doing everything he can to run a legit business. And in a time when travel is way, way down, this is what he gets. He gets a homeless advocacy group. And for those of you on the podcast, I'm putting those air quotations around advocacy because that to me is just like, nah, you're just protesting. You're just out to get your message across to whomever will listen to it. And you're basically doing stuff that's outside of the law to get that message heard. I'm not okay with that. All right, let's look at it's going down. And this is from the Tacoma Housing Now. This is their information directly. Over 40 units at Port of Tacoma Travelodge occupied to provide emergency housing. Okay, but you're not authorized to do that. That's not your job. You're basically just trespassing and hijacking somebody's business and property. Tacoma Housing Now reports an ongoing housing occupation that so far has housed over 40 people for over 4 days illegally at the Port of Tacoma Travelodge with no intervention from law enforcement. I'm reading into that stuff. This situation is unfolding, so follow them on social media or don't. We're on day 4 of the hotel occupation and settling in for night 4. They're excited. After paying for the initial night, the occupants have refused to pay or leave for 4 days. Negotiations with the hotel owner, city and county, start tomorrow. And this was on, when was this? This was a couple of days ago. Housing activists from Tacoma Housing Now, the Seattle, which is the yellow house that's just to the east of Cal Anderson Park and CHOP, and Olympia, they've all coalesced into a broad Puget Sound coalition that will support housing actions in each other's cities. So watch out for more to come from this fine group. Most of our medics on site are veterans of the recent far-right battles in Olympia that saw 2 anti-fascist protesters shot. We're also in a chat with housing organizers from Philadelphia, Ashland, Oregon, Medford, El Sereno, California, and Los Angeles, trading tactics and media tips. The nationwide movement is growing. All right, Tacoma Housing Now, they on Twitter. Come to the Port of Tacoma Travelodge tomorrow at 10 a.m. for eviction defense. We've housed 43 people and need your help to keep them housed. Tomorrow, Travelodge Corporate will get involved, and we need at least 70 people there to prevent eviction. This stuff is just crazy. It's just rally to defend us from eviction, Monday, December 28th, a couple of days ago. We're currently in the unique position of allying with the hotel owner because we've made it clear to him that we want him to get paid. They want him to get paid, but they don't have any legal structure to get him paid. They're just basically pointing at the city and going, those guys need to pay. If you really want to man up, Tacoma Housing Now, you'll pay this guy and you'll clear out. You've made your point, but you're not going to do that because you don't have the money. We've started contacting city council members and we'll contact the rest of the city council tomorrow so CARES and or FEMA money can be used to pay for hotel rooms. Okay, but you're kind of mandating that, you're dictating that, and this isn't the way that goes. While the city of Tacoma claims to provide hotel vouchers for houseless people, nobody we've ever talked to has seen these mysterious vouchers. Other, smaller towns in our country are paying for hotel rooms, so Tacoma should too. Our message is that there's room at the inn, pay for it. They're not paying for it. Make somebody else pay for it. Make a small business owner pay for it. Don't take any responsibility yourselves, make others pay. That's their message, right? And I agree, city should pay for it, but you can't force it. That's not the way this works, even though that's kind of what you're doing here. All right. So that's about it. That's all I'm going to cover there. You kind of get the message. Whatever happens tomorrow, the hotel owner has threatened to call Travelodge Corporate, which I would have done long ago. This is still Tacoma Housing Now. We have already achieved victory. What was that? Keeping people off the streets for 4 days. Many of our houseless coalition members have severe, dire medical conditions and should be in a hospital if that's true. And being able to stay warm and take care of hygiene is helping them keep them alive. Yes, but you can't hijack a hotel. We're ready to throw down tomorrow, but hope that the city and county will pay the hotel owner instead. So they're just not taking responsibility for their actions at all. They're saying, these people should pay. We hope this all works out. We hope it all works out. The city should pay. All right, that's enough from those guys. How about we check out Jason Rants? Let's see what he says on this. Tacoma radicals, instead of activists, Tacoma radicals hold Fife Motel hostage. Call on activist army for defense. Slightly different spin, isn't it, than the last two we saw. Radical activists with Tacoma Housing Now are holding a Travelodge Motel hostage in Fife, while activists are assembling their version of an army to defend the takeover. It's an escalating and dangerous situation. Law enforcement and local politicians are not doing much to stop it. Of course, COVID is also now spreading within the motel, as one of the organizers and one homeless occupier apparently tested positive for the virus. Shocking. I can't imagine. This should be called out for what it is, the intersection of deranged activism and domestic terrorism. Yep, I agree. And here's a tweet from Tacoma Housing Now. CARES money, FEMA money, defunding the police, so many options for funding. Pay up, City of Tacoma and Pierce County. They're doing something. They're demanding somebody else pay. That is terrorism. That's what it is. And since you're doing it domestically here, let's call it what it is, domestic terrorism. Tacoma Housing now holds a motel hostage. The fringe progressives behind Tacoma Housing Now paid for 16 rooms for one night on Christmas Eve at the Fife Travelodge. They housed approximately 40 homeless people. But they refuse to leave, and they're not paying. They've since taken 2 more motel rooms, and Cairo 7 TV reports the group's intent is to force the county or city to turn the motel into housing for the homeless. Now they're holding the motel hostage and demanding the city or county pay for the nights that they're staying in the rooms. We paid for the first night, and we're now demanding the city or county pay for the other nights we've been here. That's just how they do it, apparently. They just thought, wow, this is a good idea. Why not? Let's just give this a run. We paid for the first night, and now we're demanding that the city and county pay for the other nights we've been here. Tacoma Housing Now spokesperson and local socialist leader Rebecca Parson defiantly told King 5. All right, so Rebecca Parson, Tacoma Housing Now. She belongs in jail with the other occupiers, is what Jason Rantz is saying. And I'm like, yeah, they should at least be charged with trespassing and throw them out. Parson bizarrely claims that she's bringing business to the hotel because she's demanding government officials pay them for their theft. Yeah, you can't say you're bringing business to something when you're doing it illegally and no money is being exchanged. That's not bringing in business. That is the opposite of bringing in business. Tacoma Housing Now, what you are doing, you know what you're doing. You know exactly what you're doing. And a lot of people aren't okay with that. This is remarkably insane and unstable position to hold. It's also unclear how many homeless people Parson is allowing to crash at her place for the night. Good question. I wonder. I'm going to go with none. Put them at a hotel. Pay for a night. Don't pay for the rest. An army follows. Tacoma Housing Now is called on its army of supporters. Think vegan Avengers, but in homemade defensive gear, lame nicknames, and superpowers that mostly involve playing victim on Twitter. That's a really good description right there. Homemade defensive gear. You'll see these guys show up with some swords and some shields, and they're LARPing. They are live action role playing. They've got their helmets, they've got their gas mask, got their little backpack with all their stuff, maybe a brick or two in it. They've got lame nicknames. And superpowers that mostly involve playing victim on Twitter. That is a lot of what you see with these activists, is that, it's not us, it's them. We are victims. We're victims. And they show up en masse to help keep them safe from law enforcement. On Twitter, they ask for activists to show up for eviction defense. We need at least 70 people there to prevent eviction. I just read that, didn't I? Yep, so that's true. Progressive and socialist activists have rallied behind the movement on social media. Of course they have. Antifa activists, with It's Going Down, that's the last website I just read to you from, which promotes anarchist, anti-fascist, autonomous, anti-capitalist, and anti-colonial movements, promise they have 50 to 70 people ready to defend if needed. So if somebody comes along and says, you guys got to get out, they've got 50 to 70 people ready to roll, ready to do their thing. Just like they did at Cal Anderson Park, at CHOP here. What was that, a couple of weeks ago? They had an army ready to defend. They built up little walls to try and keep people out, keep the police out. Did that work? No, it didn't. This is a hardcore group of true believers. They're so anti-capitalist, for example, they have their own Instagram and Twitter accounts. Does that make sense? No. Yeah. Crazy, right? I mean, Jason Rantz is just basically making fun of them. They report that housing activists from Tacoma Housing Now, Seattle, the Yellow House, it's the one next to Cal Anderson Park, and Olympia have coalesced, and we talked about that. According to reports, about 60 protesters have rallied outside the motel as backup. They're just hanging out. They don't have jobs. They're just doing their own thing. They're just like, yeah, here we are. They are keeping me hostage. That is the motel owner/manager. Meanwhile, the activists are terrorizing a minority business manager. How woke of them. Get woke, go broke. I'm just devastated, motel manager Shawn Randhawa told the Tacoma News Tribune. Because of the protest, I have nothing else. I was barely getting through this pandemic, and now this. This Christmas, the Grinch came. We already read that, but it's worth reading again because this guy is taking a beat down he does not deserve. Tacoma Housing Now activists justify their hostage takeover by pointing to the Paycheck Protection Program loan that went to Randhawa, which was used to keep his employees paid. It's not meant to house the homeless. The Paycheck Protection Program, that is meant to keep your employees paid when your business is shut down or impacted during a pandemic. So a lot of these activists, they just take one concept, throw it out there, because their group in general isn't real smart and or doesn't really care. They just want to do and think the way they do without any real regard for laws or society, because that's just what they're doing. They're keeping me hostage. No one is out to help me, Randhawa told the Tribune. It's complete lawlessness in the city of Fife. But to the activists, they're just fighting a just cause while not actually housing homeless people where they live, choosing instead to steal from others. A lot of these folks here have chronic illnesses, activist Arrow claimed to Cairo TV. Talked about that on the other podcast. They have everything from cancer to severe infections, seizures, all sorts of chronic illnesses. So why are they in a travel lodge? That's not where you need to be when you're sick. You don't want to be in a tent either, but hijacking a hotel is not the solution. Sounds like these people should be in hospital beds and not Fife Motel rooms. Yeah. But no one will ever accuse Arrow of being as sharp as the weapon he named himself after. He should also be in a jail cell. That counts as housing. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Fife leadership is missing in action. Missing in action as this motel occupation escalates, city leadership and law enforcement both are taking the same approach, feckless cowardice. They're just not doing anything. That's what Seattle does. Just don't do anything. We hope that gets better. Fife City Manager Hyun Kim told the Tribune he wants an open dialogue. I would like to bring together partners to provide wraparound services to these people. This is Fife City Manager. I understand that some are sick and just a hotel room is not an end-all be-all, he said. Occupying a private motel and potentially putting them out of business is untenable. I fear for those who might lose their job. Yeah, this guy might lose his business entirely. Is it untenable? Perhaps Kim should, I don't know, do something about it. Like enforce the law. That's a good starting point, right? We've got laws for a reason, but we're not enforcing them. Why is that? Why is that? Because we're kowtowing to domestic terrorists. That's why. Perhaps offer to the business owner the same anger and urgency he'd expect if his home was taken over by radical lunatics. Yeah, we've got this big double standard, right? Fife Police Chief Pete Fisher even acknowledges the lawlessness, but won't do much about it. We're trying to see if we can work out a resolution without having to take law enforcement action. Why? Why? I don't know. So apparently we do negotiate with terrorists. Yeah, that's what is going on, right? And have we even started the negotiations? Probably not. I mean, is there some talk? Everybody's just kind of in this holding pattern of, well, let's see if somebody does something. And in the meantime, this guy's hotel is going down the toilet. It's just tanking. It's just crazy. Update. This is an update from Jason on the 30th, which is today. This was very early this morning. City officials have apparently made an offer of tiny homes for some of the homelessness that Tacoma Housing Now is using as props to forward its radical agenda. But those offers have been rejected by the hostage takers. I like it. We call them hostage takers. Now they're adding even more demands. Tacoma Housing Now on Twitter. The offer of 10 tiny homes is insufficient. Apparently, the city just doesn't believe us when we say we have 43 people here. Plus, most of our residents don't qualify for the tiny homes because they're not couples, single women, or families with children. Well, you're going to have to make do with what you get because eventually you're going to get tossed. And just like every other one of your protests, doesn't really accomplish much. And, cops just toss you out anyway, right? So, meanwhile, Q13 Fox reporter Steve Kiggins is put on his activist hat, and a tweet seems to show his support for the movement. Now we're tagging other media. Someone tweeted, "You can literally just take over someone's business and get away with it now." Unbelievable. And those are the comments that I'm going to see from you guys on this one, right? Kiggins responded with a link explaining colonial America. What? It's a mind-numbingly stupid comparison. It is. You can't just take over a hotel and try and make somebody else pay. There are laws. We live in a society. It's tweets like his that lead to people questioning the objectivity of reporters in this city. Agreed. That's why you guys are listening to a real estate guy talk about the news. Because you don't really trust anybody else. And that's part of the reason I got into this. Because the stuff that I would hear from the media and what I knew to be true, wildly different stories. And you can kind of see that from these varying different angles of how people put this spin. Now, Jason Rantz's spin is definitely more in line with what I see because I'm a pro-business guy. I care about the homeless as well. But the way that Tacoma Housing Now is going about this right now is, it's crazy. It's literally crazy. It makes no sense except to them and for them getting their message across. But are these the people that you want really taking care of your homelessness situation? I don't think so. If they're willing to hijack a hotel, what else are they willing to do? Probably anything. The end justifies the means. That's what we've got going on here. So I think that's about it. There's not a ton here left, but Seattle lunacy spreads. Did anyone realistically think Seattle-style insanity would spread to Fife? Yet here we are. And that's what I've been talking about, is that this is spreading. It might come to your town. How will your town handle it? I know how my town handles it. We're just going to kind of let that go and hope this goes away, and we'll just see. Could be the summer of love. Who knows? You shouldn't be surprised. We've already seen it spread across Washington and Oregon and into California. It's not going to stop because we don't do enough to force it to. And the politicians who think they're de-escalating by talking it out don't realize that they're likely inspiring citizens from taking matters into their own hands to police their own neighborhoods and businesses. We know that doesn't end well. And I think my next podcast is on that. Citizens basically creating their own little mini armies and enforcing the law on their own. Because guess what? It's not happening. Political leadership in these kind of towns, they are not dropping the hammer where it needs to be dropped. And this is just going to get worse and worse and worse. How many other hotels need to be hijacked in the name of advocacy? I don't know. It's probably going to happen. It's probably going to keep on going. And as it does, I will report it to you right here on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. That's it for me on this one. I'm on to the next. Thanks for being here. I'd love to have you subscribe if you want to. If you don't, thanks again for being here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye for now. All right, we have a breaking news update on the Tacoma radicals holding the Fife Motel hostage. This is from Jason Rantz. This came in while I was just recording the last podcast. This is an update as of today at 11:16 a.m. So, I don't know, just not very long ago. How about that for a specific time? Hey, Cornelius. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
I should be here tomorrow. See you then. Thanks, Cornelius. So this is an update. Radicals, and this is Jason Rantz, of course. He's just Johnny on the spot with this stuff. Radicals with Tacoma Housing Now say police have arrived and they are breaking doors open to remove the occupiers from the motel. Here's a tweet from Tacoma Housing Now. They're the activists, the homeless activists. domestic terrorists. Cops are on site blocking us in and have PPE and personal protection equipment and zip ties, meaning they're going to tie some people up. We believe arrests are about to happen. That was 11:06 today. Today is Wednesday, December the 30th. Cops are breaking doors open. That's from Tacoma Housing Now at 11:13. So they're in. They are taking back the hotel. Good, I say. Good. Arrest a bunch of people and put them in jail. Not necessarily the homeless people doing the trespassing, because I think they're just kind of pawns in this scheme. But the people who organized this, they need to go to jail. They need to at least be arrested. Police were seen via a live stream in full protective gear ahead of their action. Well, based on the lunacy that the police have encountered and a lot of these other things, full protection gear, that's warranted. One homeless man talking to Behind Enemy Lines live streamer says he came to the motel for a few nights but wasn't part of the original action by Tacoma Housing Now. Not everyone occupying the motel have agreed to leave. Uh-oh. One woman refused to leave the parking lot, although it's unclear if she's homeless or an activist. This is a developing story and will be updated in real time. So police went in, cleared it out. As we have more stories on that, I will provide you an additional update. But this is part 2 to my first podcast, and it came in. You know what the deal is. All right. Thanks for watching. I'll catch up with you guys soon. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.